Hi, I'm Jessica Gregory, and this is my EcoBuzz. Welcome to another episode of Myth or Fact, where we'll shed some light on the Grand River in Michigan's Lower Peninsula. Clear as mud? Let's find out.
Number 1, myth or fact, the Grand River often looks brown because it's dirty and polluted.
The Grand River has certainly had its share of contamination, a story that unfortunately is shared by many of our world's waterways today.
It is true that old stormwater and sewage systems in Grand Rapids and other nearby cities used to have interconnected sections called combined sewage overflow points. At these points, after a hard rainstorm or flooding event, stormwater and sewage would end up in the river.
But this is not the case anymore. The city of Grand Rapids has spent 3 decades and over $400 million replacing their old systems, and other area municipalities have made similar changes. As a result, in this area there have not been any such overflows since 2015, and studies show that water quality has greatly improved since then. So why is the water still brown? We often assume that any water that isn't crystal clear is dirty and polluted, but that's just not always the case, and the Grand River is a really good example of that. It's a large water system made up of many smaller tributaries that comprise the second largest drainage area in the state of Michigan. That's over 5,500 miles.
The brown color comes from the many particles of sand, silt, and clay soil that are constantly washed downstream. The sediments arise from the natural movement of water against the banks and bottom of the river, and then during periods of flooding when water is moving more quickly, more particles are suspended in the water.
This, of course, gives it an even more cloudy appearance. The Grand River is also not a spring-fed water system, which is usually what contributes to the clear-flowing, smaller streams we're used to seeing. Number 2, the Grand River does not support a high biodiversity of living organisms. The Grand River may not be a crystal clear trout stream, but the diversity of life and habitats it supports is amazing. 108 species of fish have been identified in the Grand River, the vast majority of which can be found within 40 miles of Lake Michigan. These range from the sought-after steelhead or rainbow trout and Chinook salmon, among others, to the lesser-known long-nosed gar and river red horse. And this doesn't even include all of the plant life, insects, mammals, birds, and other organisms that the Grand River supports. The Grand River is also home to many, many types of rare species, some of which are listed as threatened or endangered in Michigan. This includes 18 species of freshwater mussels, which, in case you didn't know, are important water filterers, nutrient providers, and food sources for other organisms. Number 3, the Grand River plays a significant economic and ecological role in Michigan's landscape.
At 248 miles long, the Grand River is Michigan's longest river. It comprises 13% of the Lake Michigan drainage basin. That means that 13% of all the water flowing into Lake Michigan comes from the Grand River.
The Grand River has played a significant role in every part of Michigan's history. Native American peoples called the Anishinaabe settled the area along the Grand River 2,000 years ago. They used it to supply their food and transportation. And then, in the late 18th century and early 19th centuries, fur traders traveled up and down the Grand River using it to transport their furs. By the 1850s, once the city of Grand Rapids had been settled, the Grand River was heavily used not for transportation of people, but for transporting logs that were used in the booming furniture industry.
Even though today the Grand River isn't a major mode of transportation or shipping, it is heavily utilized for recreational purposes like boating and fishing, not to mention the natural habitat diversity it provides.
I hope this episode has helped bring some clarity to your perspective of this important waterway in Michigan, and perhaps to others you know of as well. And just remember that our first impressions and assumptions aren't always accurate. Thanks for joining me. Happy naturing.